conferences, it's just you get challenged. And I've got to say, Mark, I was challenged by that, right? And I'm going to guess I wasn't alone. It's really interesting because I look at my kids who are well into their 20s now, and so they missed the whole screen thing, and they certainly did things that I did, but they also that I didn't do. But I didn't necessarily pay a lot of attention to why it is they were doing those different things and whether they actually were different things. Maybe they were the same things, just doing it differently. I don't know. So I think it's really interesting to hear someone like Mark and to reflect on what it is that's actually happening, because sometimes we get wrapped up in the hype of what's going on, and what it is that actually should be happening gets lost. So I'm actually it's interesting. I'm going to spend some time. We still do play, even though my kids are adults now, different sort of play. But again, I remember the stuff I did when I was their age, and so I'm going to take a stronger, harder look and see, what is different, but what is the same. So we have a small gift to say thank you. Yeah, don't break that glass bottle in there, the bit of gin. Thank you. We very much appreciate that. Next, we have an amazing panel. So before I talk about and introduce the panel to you, I'm going to ask you to do what generally we're asking people not to do, and that is to take out your phone. Because in terms of the way that the panel works, we want you to get involved in the panel through a Q&A. And so on your app, and I'm just going to do it while I'm talking to you now, if you scroll down to the panel discussion and click on it, then there's going to be a live section for live Q&A, right? And so what we're encouraging you to do is that as the panel gets going and there's something that you're interested to ask, if you can type your question in there, then we'll be able to put those questions to the panel. Does that all make sense? Oh, yes, sorry. Joe's just mentioned that's absolutely right. We're sure there's going to be 325 questions. Obviously, we won't be able to get to all of them. We'll get to some of them. So, I am very excited to introduce our panel. They're all sitting down here. I'd first like to introduce the facilitator for our panel today, our patron. Yes, we have a patron, the Emeritus Professor, Dorothy Scott, and many of you will know her. Give her a warm welcome. Dorothy, as you know, is an honorary professor fellow in the social work at the University of Melbourne and an adjunct professor at the Australian Centre for Child Protection at the University of South Australia. And Dorothy has worked for a long time, I'll just say a long time, and has done some incredible things in her career, including in the 1970s, pioneered the development of a sexual assault counselling service and specialist services for women with postpartum psychiatric disorders and their children. So, Dorothy, we're looking forward to you facilitating the conference, the panel. And on the panel, we have four amazing people. We have Kate Fox, and she's here today representing the Engage Pasefika Playgroup. Actually, I'm just looking down here. Oh, there she is. She's over there. I was looking down at the panel here, and then we also have Gabriel Carazo, and he's come to us to talk about RAD Dads. And I've got, as you might guess, I've got a particular interest in seeing more blokes in the picture here. We've got Fiona Holder. Fiona is a member of our staff, and she's here as a facilitator and coordinator of playgroups for children with additional needs. And she also wears the hat of a parent of children with additional needs. And finally, we also have Melissa Carter, and she joins us here today to share her experience as a rainbow parent. So can I ask all of you to come up on stage? We're going to move this so that the people over here can see the panel, and we look forward to hearing it. Thank you.
Wow. Well, welcome everybody. And I'm hoping the mic is working. It's a delight to be here. It's an honour to be the patron of Playgroup Victoria. And it's a great privilege and honour to have such an amazing panel. So, over 50 years, there's been an evolution from playgroups being very locality-based, very geographically based, as so many still are. And now we see a flowering of diversity in playgroups that are often based on a common need or an identity. And today we're going to hear about 4 very different playgroups. And I'm going to invite each member of the panel to tell us a little about the story of their playgroup, the community that it represents, and a little story of its evolution, and perhaps the odd challenge along the way. So let's perhaps start, Gabriel, with yours, if we may, and go forth about RAD Dads, and then we'll have a short overview, not that short, but not too long, and then we'll explore some of the issues that come from the 4 short presentations, and of course your questions.
Yeah, great. RAD Dads. RAD Dads is, what should I say, the responsive, active and dynamic dads. So it's an acronym and also a philosophy. So that's a philosophy that that sort of guides the group and the things that we would do. RAD Dads is for region, like we're in regional settings of Victoria. So at the moment, it's based out of in the Macedon Ranges. So responsive and active is we cater for space that accommodates for the needs, interests, well, specifically to the strengths that dads have, and we leverage from the strengths and incorporate that into group. So we would do that in either indoor play, which is a bit more based around comfort and floor play, and then nature play. So out in the bush and a bit more. So that's the active part. So so we originally started in the traditional playgroups and playgrounds, but something wasn't right. Something just didn't seem right. Pushing kids on swings and having chat, there just wasn't something that, and I noticed very quickly that people weren't returning, and there was a bit of an anxiety that was occurring there. So the D, which is dynamic, it's a constantly, so since it started, it's probably changed 5 times. So the group is just constantly evolving as information and feedback is being received, new needs are being identified. The group will overhaul itself, go into a little hibernation, and then come back with a whole new array of activities and groups that sort of meet the need. And that's just the format of it. That's how it. That's its philosophy, catering to the needs of responsiveness and active parenting, and a dynamic approach.
Wow, that's so interesting, that particularly that dynamic evolution.
Yes.
We might come back to that later and how you facilitate that process. But Fiona, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit from the disability perspective about the playgroups with which you're familiar, the community which they are part of, and how, perhaps giving us an example of how one has evolved.
Okay, so I'm a Play Connect Plus facilitator, and for anyone that knows Play Connect, we originated in 2009, and I've only been here since 2019, so it's been around for a long time. It's evolution, I guess. It's evolved into a new program, but primarily Play Connect Plus is a play group that's specially designed for children with disability, chronic illness, and developmental delays. And the great thing about it is it's government funded, so it's free for families. You don't need a disability diagnosis to be a participant. And it is a holistic approach for for the whole family. So siblings, grandparents, parents, mums, dads, everybody can come. Carers, we have support workers come. So, and in terms of its evolution, up until a year ago, it used to be predominantly for autistic children. So now we cover all disabilities as well. So we only have 11. Actually, we have 12, sorry, in this state now. And we have an online service as well. And so we just try and support the families at the need that they're at and build their capacity so that they can be stronger in their community.
Thank you. And did you want to say anything about particular challenges along the way that you've overcome, or we can come back to that later if you prefer?
I think probably the biggest challenge we have is funding, and that's not really, that doesn't encompass our what the challenge is within our sessions. I think trust is something that once you have trust with families, I think you have them for as long as you possibly can. So in terms of that, I haven't actually experienced, I guess, challenge within my setting. I tend to have good retention with my families. Yeah, I feel really lucky, really privileged actually to be involved in the program.
Thanks, Fiona.
Okay.
Mel, do you want to share with us something of the story of a rainbow playgroup and any evolution or changes, or what's the essence of it?
The essence of Rainbow Playgroup is rainbow families. We are for LGBTIQA+ families and their children. Did you say the essence of it? I don't know. I guess it's just rainbow families coming together.
And perhaps a little about its origin and how it's evolved.
So
and
the
who
first
kicked it off, all that.
Do you know what? I don't actually know. The first Rainbow Playgroup was started in 2017, and I think it just came about from a family wanting to meet other rainbow families. Now they have 14 across Victoria, which I think is pretty cool, and one Rainbow Dads playgroup.
Great.
But I didn't start it, so I just attend with my child.
Great, thank you. Thank you. And Kat, there's a range of culturally based playgroups, and perhaps you could tell us about yours, and then others in the audience may have some ideas, reflections, questions about theirs. But can you give us a thumbnail sketch of the evolution of the playgroup that you've been involved with, please?
So I am representing a Pacific Island playgroup today, which is for Pasifika communities. It was initiated by a wonderful woman called Anasina Gray-Barberio, who is soon to be the first Samoan MP. She's being sworn into Parliament on Thursday, which we're very excited about. Leader of the Greens taking over for Samantha Ratnam. And Anasina's journey was in creating Engage Pasefika, which is a grassroots community organisation which is focused on enhancing health outcomes for Pasifika people. But as part of that, we all know that children are the most important things in your life if you are a parent, and mental health really came to the forefront during COVID, when a lot of us weren't able to attend playgroups and things like that. So that was sort of why she initiated it, to work with families and children and to connect them to services. And this was all voluntary based, so this was her off her own pocket starting this up. I was connected to this because of a colleague of mine. I also work for Hume City Council, and someone let me know there's a Pasifika playgroup. So I started attending with my child, and through conversations with Anasina, she realised that I was early childhood trained as well. So she's sort of been doing what I call the gradual release model. I'm sure some of you have heard of that, where she's trying to give opportunities to others. So at the moment, she's transitioning to her new role in state government politics. We're so excited for her. And it's really just a bunch of mums who are driving the Pasifika group. So when I say Pasifika, there are many, many countries that we would love to welcome to our playgroup. Predominantly at the moment, we're made up of Samoan families. I represent Kiribati and Fiji. That's where my family is from. And we have Niue and we have Tongan families as well. But if you know anyone that you can refer to us, Pacific Island Playgroup, find us on Instagram. We operate out of Broadmeadows, and it's just about connecting people to culture, language, things like that. Some people are born in Australia, like myself, and connecting to their cultural heritage. Some people have been born overseas, moved to Australia with their families as young children. And then we actually have, very exciting, some families who are non-Pasifika parents, but they have adopted children from the Pasifika region. So even more important for them to have this cultural connection, this shared languages, dancing, food, of course, all those things coming together in our playgroup.
Wow. So can I ask you if there are unique benefits from people participating in your playgroup? And I might throw that open to everyone, but can you think of something that's a distinctive outcome or a unique benefit from a Pasifika playgroup or a culturally based playgroup?
Yes, I would say that sense of belonging and feeling strong in your cultural identity. I myself grew up regionally in a little town called Portland, southwest Victoria, and I was one of few families of colour and often feeling culturally isolated. So I did have my family in Fiji, and no one had really moved into Australia from my mum's siblings until I was in my teen years. So those early years, those early connections with people who looked like me and understood my mum's language, things like that, I missed out on. So just developing that for my son, so he knows where his family is from, and also for other children having access to, you know, a free playgroup that is community-led, like to meet other people. That's just for them, and we can share our stories and our songs and learn a little bit together. That's just what makes it unique, is that we all get to go to kindergarten for free, and we all get to do those things later in life and meet people from everywhere. And we're a very multicultural society in Melbourne. It's wonderful, but we also really need to understand where we come from. So this is our culturally safe space where we're able to do that.
Thank you. If I had to say the same question, is there a unique benefit or distinctive outcome about each of the playgroups that we've heard? What might that be? Mel, have you got any thoughts on them? Perhaps for you
I wonder if we would all
particularly?
say the same thing. Is it just like seeing other families that look like our own?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, like for me, seeing other families where they use the same language as I do, I use they, them pronouns, and there are other families at the playgroup where they also use they, them pronouns, but when we go to kinder, there's nobody else that uses them. So it's really important for my child to be exposed to that kind of language and community.
Yeah, yeah. And a sense of belonging, would you say? Yeah. Fiona?
I agree as well. So Play Connect Plus is a sense of belonging for families of children with difference. And I said before, you don't necessarily have to have a diagnosis, but generally speaking, you might have realised that your child has a developmental delay, or they're not necessarily presenting the same as another child that you know. And when you find your Play Connect, it's like you've found almost home, because there's no judgment about behaviour or delay. Your child can just be free to enjoy those 2 hours. Mums, dads can just, take a bit of a load off, have a rest, and know that it's a safe, beautiful space. So families are willing to travel to come to be there, and then through their journey, we can sort of nurse them through that diagnostic pathway. So yeah, it's certainly worth travelling for.
So there's a special sort of support that comes from families have gone through or are going through a similar
Absolutely,
journey.
because a lot of the families are at staggered spaces in their journey. So when we get a family that might be quite new, feeling very vulnerable, just knowing that others out there are similar, it makes a huge difference to their general sense of well-being.
Gabriel, with RAD Dads, what would be distinctive about the playgroup compared with dads turning up to a locally based playgroup that had mothers, fathers, others? What would you say was distinctive?
Well, probably what makes it most distinct, it's always on a Saturday.
Oh, right.
It's always on a Saturday, so it works around busy schedules or working schedules in the morning as well. So it does allow for time for afternoon family. So definitely the most distinctive part is it's on a Saturday and it's free and it's fun. So the thing that going into, there's a relatability that we don't know what we're doing, like in terms of play groups and stuff like that. We've never been guided. There's no handbook for that. There's no So we've just gone back to understanding that, you know, what we're good at is having fun and playing as well as the kids. And on a Saturday, is the time where it's dedicated time.
Yeah.
It's dedicated time for play and communities and bonding with community and spending time with the kids. Yeah.
There was a father's session earlier today that some of us had the privilege of being at, and I got the clear impression that there were some men who came to those playgroups or father figures who wouldn't have felt comfortable going to a local playgroup where they may be the only bloke in the room. So do you think in your playgroup you've got men who would not be going to playgroup apart because if it was not for dads?
Yeah, that's a lot of the inspiration was going to those other playgroups and it's just not really feeling like an adequate fit.
Mm-hmm.
Different conversations, different purpose, different intention. And I guess a lot of the journey for Dad is we've been kind of excluded from the very beginning. And then we're really excited. We show up with our babies and we're like, we're here, you know, and we have a lot of relatability, but that's particularly for the ones that I was sort of attending, it just didn't seem like that was the right fit for me. And that sort of added to some further exclusion, which there sort of was the inception to sort of start up the RAD Dads. To make it on a Saturday where other people are available to come, and there's a relatability that, you know, we have our own language, and yeah, so it was just a common space, and where there was more to work with and more ease. Yeah.
That's great. Before we open it up to questions from the audience, I'm not quite sure how we're going to get to hear them. But yeah, got them right here. Terrific. I wonder if members of the panel have got questions for one another, curiosity or interest in how what works, or what hasn't worked and has changed, the process of a continual evolution and co-design, which came through in what Gabriel said. But any questions for each other?
Just any tips for funding?
Yeah,
If you're lucky enough to be here, paid, you know, and have a paid role, that's a step up. It sounds like most of us are involved in community playgroups, unpaid work, free for our community. So if you have any tips for funding or anybody here does, then that's definitely something I'd love to hear about.
help me.
Yeah, help please.
Similar needs.
We would all. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll see what the audience might wish to pose as a question. Have we got one?
We do. We have an anonymous question here that says, do you think being part of an inclusive playgroups gives you strength and empowerment to try additional playgroups, community groups?
I'm happy to take that one.
Who wants to respond to that?
I'm happy to have a go. I think the reason, I'm going to sort of answer it in two parts if I can. I think generally speaking, the reason people do reach out to a playgroup that specifically is for their need is possibly to build their capacity while we're there, and that's certainly our goal, but it's always centred around what the family actually wants to do. I know at my group, we do a lot of community activity as well, so that we're trying to introduce families to community activities so that they feel safe to actually go and engage. So certainly I think capacity absolutely can be built so that you can want to engage in other community things, but I think it's personal choice ultimately.
Any other responses to that?
I might say I probably feel comfortable enough in my playgroup that I don't need to find any others.
Good answer too.
I get everything that I need from my playgroup. You know, they do the new parents groups, the local ones. I'm linked in with that one, but I sought out the Rainbow Playgroup because I felt like I wasn't getting what I needed from that playgroup. And this one, you know, I've got friendship. My kid has friends. You know, we have common interests, common lifestyle, and I feel like that's enough for us. We gotta say that.
No, it's a really good answer.
We don't need anything else
because part of why people seek you out, because that is their community.
Yeah.
Okay, well, any other responses before we perhaps go for another question?
Oh,
Yeah, Gabriel?
I would love to have more options. There are none.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's very minimal options, and if there were options and opportunities and a welcoming environment, I would absolutely. I love spending time with my kids and other families. Unfortunately, it's just very, 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 very scarce and very limited, particularly in regional, rural, and remote areas. Being a dad, there's not many places to dad.
And be rad at it.
To be a RAD dad.
I think speaking for the community outside of my Pasefika playgroup in the region that I work, there are limited playgroups that are accessible and free. So that is a barrier for that region. I think I understand what you're saying, Gabriel, that there's a lot of families who are seeking and searching for their playgroups, but often we only have the capacity to support community playgroups in the council I work for in the northern region. And so finding their group can be really difficult for some families. So we're crying out in the northern suburbs of Kalkalo, and a new babies playgroup has just been set up by one of my colleagues to meet a need there. But the growth, I'm sure many of you are from growth regions, there are just so many babies and so many houses and just only so many spaces within a playgroup. So unless it's a supported playgroup or a disability specific one, that we are a bit limited in what we can offer. The huge growth and trying to catch up with that. It's difficult.
Perhaps we'll go on to another question from the audience if we have one.
Are there families in your playgroups that struggle to engage? And if so, are you trying out any strategies to invite them in the hard to reach families?
I'll go if that's okay. Yeah, we're trying to find more Pasefika people. So just trying to get it out there. We've just started an Instagram page, Pacific Island Playgroup. I've got some flyers in my bag as well. Just trying to, how do we spread the word that we're here and we're free and you don't have to sign up for a term. You just show up and we'll welcome you in. So this platform, thank you very much for having us here today, because that allows me to speak to how many people in this room and let you know that if you have Pasefika friends, please refer them to our playgroup. We would love to welcome them in.
Any other responses? Yeah. Mel?
I'm wondering if that means like at the playgroup or bringing people into the playgroup.
Interpret it how you want is correct.
Yeah, engaging.
Yeah.
The people that you know need it the most out there.
That's right.
Like, ones that would benefit from it, often, reluctant to try something new for whatever reason.
But in the same way, in locally based playgroups, that sometimes people may not feel comfortable because of they might be struggling with a condition such as depression, or they may have insecure housing and have real anxiety based on living on the edge of poverty and going to a group that they think will be filled with more affluent people. I guess, the fancy term of that is intersectionality, but where are there particular people families who would be eligible for your playgroups that are on the margins and where you need to do outreach, just as other playgroups might need to do to make them a welcoming and inclusive place?
I can go.
Yeah.
So that's something that's been sort of identified that quite frequently for a lot of dads, they haven't been involved for the first 1,000 days. So when we're inviting and engaging dads with maybe a 3-year-old, there's not a lot of confidence in being in the community. Other concerns of maybe fear of judgment of not being able to handle emotions or nappy changes or feeding or things like that. So one way that we sort of organise that is to have it in a sequence where we start off with like baby sensory play with the family. It's a family group. So we have the RAD fams. We start with RAD fams and then we lead all the way through to mastery, which is an adventure play group. So there's a sequence that allows for the parent and to build confidence along the way. And we're mobile. We load up the car and take the group to people. We don't expect for them to come to us.
Yeah, that's a really helpful answer.
And we
thanks.
start with that sequence of really easy, comfortable, not a lot of pressure with family or community that you're familiar with, and then we sort of separate from that, and eventually we get to the bush where it's risky play.
Ah, right. Might come back to risky play in a while. It sounds exciting. Any other thoughts about the engagement, the reaching out to perhaps harder to engage families that could really benefit from the playgroups that you've been talking about?
I can answer, although our answer probably won't sit with this too greatly, in that we have very limited numbers that we can actually take into our playgroup, and we have very limited playgroups available throughout Victoria. So generally speaking, we are waitlisted, which is awful because you want to be able to service more families. So we're at the other end of the scale of that, which is very challenging.
So there are families waiting anxiously, and they might be waiting for a long time?
It used to be a lot longer, but now with 3-year-old kinder going to 15 hours, we're getting them younger and moving them through a lot faster.
Right.
Yeah.
That can be a very isolating period for a family.
Especially when they're waiting on lists for therapy services as well and diagnostics. Absolutely, because we're that integral first step for that family. Yeah.
Mel, did you want to add?
One barrier that we have, and it's not a barrier for everyone, but as a single parent, I particularly notice it, is that we have 14 playgroups, but not all of them are free. Some of them you have to pay a membership for. Some of them are, you have to travel for, and that's a barrier.
Income's a barrier.
Income is a barrier.
Yeah.
Having to pay for playgroup is a barrier.
Yeah, particularly when we're in a cost of living crisis. Yeah. Another question.
Would each of you be able to provide a story, either of yourselves or anonymously, about somebody else and how you've seen the community of your playgroup change a particular family?
I can.
Yeah.
I haven't had to start crying, actually. You hear a lot of, we get families at their rawest and, at the start of their journey, and it's a really, really, really uncertain time. And I heard something recently, and it was actually in the interview that I did, about a parent said to me that Play Connect Plus is the only time all week they get to speak to another adult that isn't their partner. And I genuinely felt so sad, but also so grateful that we were able to provide the space for them to have a friend network, for their children to be able to engage and play, and to scaffold their capacity so that they feel strong to advocate for their child. So, yeah, I feel really lucky. I think this is now working.
I can talk about how playgroup was wonderful for me. I might cry. I started going to the playgroup when my little one was 7 months old. And when he was 10 months old, my life fell apart. My partner walked out, and along with all my friends. My baby was only 10 months old. I had very, very severe postpartum depression. And going to playgroup saved me. It was the... Thank you. Very dramatic, but when your baby is 10 months old, and my baby is not an easy baby. And my parents are in South Australia. I don't have family here. The only support that I had was my in-laws, and obviously when my partner left, I didn't have that either. And so it was the one time a week where I could go and be around grown-ups, and they just welcomed me with open arms and took care of me when I really needed it.
Well, thanks, Mel.
We've been going for 3.5 years now. No, not 3.5. My son's 3.5, but almost 3.5 years. But I don't work full time so that we can keep going to the playgroup because I need it for my own sanity.
Wow, thanks, Mel, because you've shown us just how deeply that playgroup met your needs at a time when it was very important. Thank you for speaking from your heart.
Thanks, Mel. I said I wasn't going to
I'm
cry
very
either. I feel like this is a little bit of a step up from me, like scrolling Instagram and crying at strangers. I have at least met Mel before.
Stranger on stage.
I know, but I was like, I'm not going to cry. No, I'm fine. No, I'm not fine. For my son, I'll talk about my son as like attending as a parent. His first experience at Playgroup, he clung to me and he didn't want to go. He misunderstood. I hadn't really prepared him for what Playgroup was. The last thing he'd done, because he was born just before COVID, and then lockdowns happened and we weren't able to go to anything. So when he started childcare, there was no orientation. I just pushed him in the door and they took him. I wasn't allowed to go in. I didn't get to tour the service or anything. So his last experience of being taken to a room with children, I didn't think about that, was that I left him there and I didn't come back. I did eventually, like after I finished work for that day, I went back. But that was what his experience was. So I hadn't really, my bad, we learned. I hadn't prepared him for the fact that, we were going to stay and play together. It took me 10 minutes to figure out that's what he was afraid of. So he was very clingy at the start. I had to constantly reassure him, no, I'm staying to play too. We play together, we make friends, I'm making friends too. So I went from this little boy who was just clinging to me and not wanting to play with the others. And then he would cry when we would sing our welcoming song in Samoan. And when they would sing his name. So he'd be fine, everybody singing, and then they sing his name, and then he would start crying because he was so, I hate to use the word shy, but it really does describe what he was feeling at that stage. To now, we've been going for over 12 months now, and he's a bit of a little leader in it. I ask him to do things to help with it, and he loudly and proudly sings and always chooses the bell instrument from the musical instruments box that I say is far too loud. But he's very happy and proud to be playing music now. So that just that journey of like him coming out of his shell, feeling comfortable and safe to the point where he's disappointed that Sina's leaving and it's just Mama at Playgroup now. He's really going to miss her. But just to see that trust and that relationship build over time with Sina and then the other mothers who attend, and there's some fathers who come and some grandmas as well. So just seeing him learning their names and calling their names and just simple things like that are a big step for my child, which I'm very, very proud of.
Oh, thank you. Gabriel, I wonder if there are any dads that, for whom it really has been transformational, a lifeline that you could tell us about without, of course, giving anything which could be identifying. But
so this is actually very specific because it's not for all dads, but for some, they really want to make a difference. They want to be different from how they were parented. Yeah. And then that's a very lonely journey. Yeah. So there's been quite a few who have found some solidarity in like you're on the same journey as I am, and because that's the oblivion. We've never been taught how to do that. So there's a few who have sort of connected a bit on that level, which is like, I'm now going to be, emotionally responsive, actively present. I'm going to try to do all of these really complex things that you see in Bluey, because that's all complex stuff. But no one teaches you how to do that. So there's now just a little hub of like we're sort of working over the next couple of years to sort of, I guess do that transition with a bit more sort of intention and purpose, it's not all. Some just enjoy being out and giving mum or carer a bit of a break on that Saturday morning. That's enough. It's very, very different. But there's been a small handful who would like, I had a fantasy and a purpose when I became a dad, but no one was there to sort of guide me with that change. Whereas, that sort of the RAD Dad sort of model is there to sort of foster and encourage that.
yeah.
It's awesome.
So for men who really want to father in a different way from how they were fathered, your group could be a lifeline.
Yeah, that's a minority. There aren't many who really sort of resonate on that. I know I do. That was my whole purpose. Is like I'm doing it differently. But to do something different is like an existential change.
Oh, yeah.
So you need a lot of support to sort of
that reparenting journey.
Yeah. And there is a small collective within the collective who we have our own little sort of group chat, which is just specifically focused on the deep dive in just how hard it is. Yeah.
And those blokes obviously feel safe. And I think trust was mentioned before. I mean, as at the core.
Yeah.
Yeah. And creating a very trustful, safe place. That's a gift. That's a gift for those who facilitate that, as well as an attribute of those who co-create that, the members of the group. Yeah.
It takes a lot for families to entrust their whole being and their ethos with you,
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
their children.
Wow, thank you. Do we have another question?
I'd like to kind of combine a few questions
Oh,
because
go
there is a
for
lot
it.
of questions.
Yeah.
There's some people who are interested in how or why challenges of starting a playgroup for a specific group, a specific community. And there's another question here that asks, what are some important features or qualities of a facilitator you think help make your playgroup so inclusive and welcoming to make sure that the families do feel safe when they're there?
So do you want to start with the challenges of beginning?
So just generally what makes that playgroup, so I think that could be part of starting a playgroup or maintaining the playgroup and having families there feel like they should be, like they're in their place and wanting to continue to attend.
Who wants to go? Top of your head.
I think the reason people, I think anyone will give something a go. I think the reason they continue to come back is because they find their people there. When you actually see people that have big life stories or a big life journey with their children start to actually trust others to actually share that information with, that's the reason you come back, because they are similar to you. That is the community. And you won't necessarily find that in all your spaces. So I think the challenge, initially would be, it's about the trust. I think once you have someone's trust, that's where you have your retention. I don't know whether that answered that question, actually, Joe. But with ours, it's a little bit different model. They're all sort of similar but different. But ours come to us because they're looking for something different. And actually, that's probably everybody here.
Well, it sounds like trust, but also belonging.
It is a sense of belonging. That's actually
is
on our
common
slogan.
across the examples we've heard. And I heard someone over here say tribe. Did someone say tribe?
Yeah.
I thought I'd just bring that phrase out.
Even when you're having a really bad day, when you're with your own community or your own people, it actually doesn't matter. You can just continue to come back with your head held high. It doesn't actually impede your experience.
Can't even count the times that I've gone to playgroup and sat there crying while my kid played around.
A lot of the mums that I work with cry all the time too, or not all the time. They cry a lot in the beginning. They cry a lot.
Don't do that now. Yeah.
That's okay.
I think actively listening to everybody and what they want from playgroup and hearing their ideas and incorporating them is what keeps them coming back, which sounds a lot like what Gabriel was talking about being dynamic and responsive and going, well, what should we do next? I thought I had the idea to go on an excursion and go out, and it turns out they'd already done that before. And then when I asked them about it, they said it was better than being in the centre because the kids always focus on the toys that they're interested in. So a couple of little boys are always there with the trucks, and a couple of little girls are over here in the sand pit. And when they went to the park and we took away those toys, it's a bit like bush kinder for those of you who know about that, nature play. You take away those toys and then the imagination that comes out. But for this group, it was the socialisation that came out, that really they were playing with each other. So we've made an effort to make that a consistent thing, that at least once a term we're going to have an excursion so that we can go out. So in a couple of weeks we're going to Werribee Zoo, which is where I work casually as a teacher as well. So I'm not sure how it's going to go, me seeing an excursion from the other side where I'm being responsible, but also their mums are with them, so I should be okay. Normally I get all the fun and none of the responsibility, which is great. So I've had to schedule buses, like the safari bus and all that stuff. So what we'll get from that, hopefully is just more of that social interaction between the kids, and then that will probably be our end of year kind of celebration, winding up, wrapping up. My son goes to school next year, so I wanted it to be one of his his fun last things as well. And then, yeah, we'll just see what that leads to back in our home. That's what you usually call it when you have a bush kinder and a home kinder, back in our home play group. Probably more animals will come out and more singing about just, you know, animal songs, things like that. Yeah.
And it sounds as if that sense of co-ownership with members of the group, thinking about how they might change things and really discussing it, that also comes through as a common feature. Yeah.
I think with ours too, ours is a little bit different in that most of the children have goals that they're working towards as well. So, or things that they might have aversions to that we might be trying to work through. So we're trying, you know, to support families with those things.
And so everyone knows those?
No, absolutely
they're-
not. That
they're
information is for us
private to
to
the
understand,
family.
and it's for the families to share with
As
each
they
other.
wish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Again, making it a safe place psychologically.
Absolutely, yeah. And everybody that attends the group has that understanding that the information that they obtain from others while they're there is just for that space.
Yes.
It's not to share with others. Yeah.
And that's very important, isn't it?
And there's the trust.
Without that, it can't be a safe place.
No, that's exactly
You
right.
have to watch what you say.
Yeah.
Another question, please, Jo.
I like how this one's worded. What advice about being part or running a play group would you like to share with your former self?
Oh. Or we also
What have you
even-
learned that you'd like to have known earlier? I think that's what it means.
Which is also another way of saying, what advice might you have for someone who was thinking about, I'm not replicating or duplicating because there's no one size fits all, but perhaps transplanting what you've helped grow in this setting, in this environment, in this community, elsewhere. What would you have liked to have known, and what would be useful sharing now? Anyone or everyone? Who goes?
That's a bit of a tricky question for me
Yeah.
because I needed all that stuff to get to where I am.
I agree with that.
Like it's very complex to just be like, just dump all this knowledge that you have 3 years down the track, because I needed to start off through experiencing some, you know, how do you motivate people and how do you encourage and how do you inspire and how do you do that without speaking? How do you just implement it into the program and into the group?
I think some of the things you've said that you've learned, you've already passed on to us though. So
Yes.
like
Yeah,
knowing
it's
that
true.
the formal playground's not as good as being in the sticks, that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
think those kind of things that you could pass on to other people who are going to do it,
Yeah.
try and replicate
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yep. Well, the interesting thing is I wish I could get that information from another 2 years and have it now because there's a lot more to go. But it's also, I'm very much about process. But the thing that I wish I knew from the very beginning was that, you know, it's not a dad thing, but a human condition thing. Is that, you know, you have the feelers and you have the doers, and you know, people there are people there that do want to talk, and there are people there that just want to do. They want to just be part of something, and sometimes, you know, just blending them all into one room isn't really a good mix. And I found that sort of at some point that didn't sort of add for a good quality play group environment because there was two different values and needs trying to meet one another. And just knowing that people have a need to feel and to talk and to share, and others have a need to just be and do and be active. And then, that just gave a lot of room to sort of design new program activities to cater for those individual needs.
Wow.
We sort of had a bad experience when one day a different staff member, a casual, was in the centre we were using, and they didn't know that our families could access the room if I wasn't there, because there was a bit of a misunderstanding about it being a facilitator-led playgroup or a community playgroup. So access was denied for a little while. So, you know, mistakes happen. Resources were locked away as well another time. But from these mistakes, like the things that have come out of this have meant enhanced outcomes for our group, but other groups as well. So when we had, you know, we used to have free access to the toys, and then they were locked away, and it was like, no, you need to bring your own. And then it's like, well, they were open before, can we go back to that? I think that was a mistake that they were open, but then we thought we were allowed to. So we have come to a wonderful partnership now. So I don't know that the word partnership would have been used before. So that now those cupboards are open not just for our playgroup, but for every other playgroup. And in fact, the team has come to us and asked us what resources we would like, which included some multicultural books that we thought we needed, multicultural dolls, because I noticed a lot of the dolls, like when I was growing up, they were all white. So that to me wasn't, you know, there's a Borai playgroup using the same space. We're a Pasifika playgroup. Let's see a little bit more different nationalities reflected here. And so the council team has been brilliant at buying those things for us and supporting us. And we just know that it benefits everyone. So, you know, those conversations, that partnership may not have happened without those mistakes happening. I believe they're mistakes, and I'm a little bit of a foot in both because I'm here as a parent, actually had to take an unpaid day of leave because my job for council is in the library. So there's two separate teams there. So I'm like, kind of feel like I'm throwing shade here, but also saying this, you know, what great outcomes have come out of that. So I just hope that maybe if you're sitting in the room and you're a community playgroup using a council space, that maybe you can go back and say, you know, if you haven't got shared resources already, that you could ask for some of that budget to be used, because realistically, like the budget, I know we're government funded as well. We are all paying taxes. We're just paid rates as well. So it's the community kind of funding this. So let's see the community benefit from these resources. And the toy library people are here too. So they were saying, you know, toy libraries as well. So hopefully that helps some of you think about that for yourselves as well.
It sounds like some very skillful leadership and advocacy and diplomacy there.
They're in the room. We thank you.
I think we've got room for one or two more questions, or one more question. Yeah, you have to choose.
Can you think of specific benefits of the community for the children? I think we've spoken more about families and parents, and we all know, everyone in the room pretty much knows that people go to playgroup for their children and stay for the adults. But do you have any feedback that you'd like to provide about, you think, the experience? I think Kat has specifically for her son, but would the rest of you like to speak about the children at the playgroup?
That's a really good question to end on, to bring us back to the children. Thank you. So who would like to respond to that, or everyone if you like?
Every morning, my little one wakes up and asks to go to playgroup. Never asks to go to kinder, never asks to go to childcare. Always asks to go to playgroup, because he just I don't know, I think he just likes being around other children whose families look and sound and act the way that his does. Yeah, specific things like we're really into gender diversity in my household, and you know, wearing dresses is pretty normal for him. But the first time he ever wore a dress was when he went to playgroup and saw another little boy wearing a dress, and then he came home and he was like a dress to wear. And I'm like, yeah, cool. So that's something that we don't see outside of playgroup very often. But yeah, I don't know. Being around other children like him.
Thanks, Mel. Other child perspectives on the playgroup?
Yeah. So it's interesting because Saturday, nature, bush, I've just been on hundreds of adventures with my kids because that's just the designated. So it's very interesting because my kids sort of have this thing: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, RAD Dad Day. Tomorrow's a RAD Dad Day. Is tomorrow RAD Dad Day? And so there's just, it's special time. But because we don't do things really in rooms, like where it's always organising something. And it's spontaneous adventure because we don't like, the whole idea is to sort of the whole purpose is to try to tap into a flow state. It's just present moment, and the dads are having as much fun as the kids, and there's some magic that occurs there. And so it's just all of those adventures, and they're child focused and like parent-child focused. But there's just something really special that comes when, spending quality time, and it's predictable for the kids. They know that RAD Dad Day is coming. It's not like they have to ask for it, or you have to designated, or it's just a known. And there's something in that predictability that I think has offered a lot of comfort for the kids.
Thank you.
Completely agree.
Fiona?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I completely agree with that. So a lot of our children are adverse to a lot of things, but one thing that they can know for sure is Play Connect Plus is predictable to them. Even though the activities may change, we do run to a visual schedule that supports them in their session. They know that the session starts at 10. They know halfway through it we will stop and we will come to the mat if they want to join us or not. But eventually, over time, through their peers, I mean, we create the space for them, but ultimately they drive, I guess, the session. And then they know that snack happens next, and then they know that we go to play outside. So they actually understand all of that. And I think the beauty in that is that we are playing our part to get them kinder ready, which will play the part to get them school ready. So it plays a really integral part in their journey.
Thank you. Last word, Kat?
Yeah, we call it Mama Monday.
I love it.
Because our playgroup's on a Monday, and it is the general consensus amongst the mums is that it's the favourite day of the week. Haven't actually questioned the children, but a lot of them are a bit young and not talking yet. But certainly, when it's Monday, my son now says, "Is it playgroup day today?" And for the first time this week, he didn't want to go, but that's just because he got a brand new bike for his birthday, so that kind of took precedence. But generally speaking, the outcomes are that the children love it and feel welcome and belong like they belong there.
Feel welcome and like they belong there. How is that for good words to wrap up for both the children and the parents? And I'd like us to thank you all for coming and being part of this panel.
Thank you, and thank you, Gabrielle, Fiona, Melissa, and Kat. To be vulnerable like you were and like you are is not nothing, and it's something in terms of playgroup land, and particularly for dads who are economical with our emotions and our words, unfortunately. But what I can say in terms of my experience when I found a dad's playgroup, because I was lucky enough to be at home for the first year when our first child was born, it was really important, and that's what we've heard about why it is that the connection about what it is that happens at a playgroup because of things that are similar, and in relation to men, the way it is that Gabrielle and I talk is different to the way that Gabrielle and I talk with Fiona and Melissa and Kat. It's different. It's not better, it's not worse, just different. And I think it's really important to acknowledge. I think in terms of one of the things that's important from our perspective is one of the roles of Playgroup Victoria is to support you to do things like what these wonderful people are doing. So if it is that you think that you need some support, or you know that there's a group that you want to start that might be similar to this or different, then please give us a call and we can help you, particularly in relation to advocacy. One of the things that sometimes is frustrating for me is that we have these sessions now when, even though I think what Lizzie's doing is a great job, she needs to sit here to hear this, right? Because it's this stuff that influences policy, right? And they are doing that. They're having round tables, and as you heard, they're hearing these things. It's really important. But I'd like that to happen. I'd like the bureaucrats to be sitting here, right? The people in the department to be hearing these messages as well, because from our perspective as an organisation that advocates for all of this, it's to make it work. We don't have to convince you. We're already on the same page, right? We need to convince our partners, and the partners in this case, in terms of you're talking about funding, for example, government's a big part of that. But we also have organisations and foundations, including, I know there's some people from Minderoo in the room that make this happen, right? So it's not just about government; it's a whole of community, and we can do that. We can connect up, make those connections where you think that could be valuable. So please call us if you need that support, because that's part of our role. Well, that brings us to the end of day one. I can't believe it, actually. I feel like I was up here 5 minutes ago. But a lot has happened and a lot of really good stuff has happened. So I want to say thank you to our presenters, those of you who are still here. And I want to say thank you to you